So while they're sitting down, we'll start. We'll call the meeting to order. Welcome to the Murray City Planning Commission meeting for December 5, 2019. I want to welcome all of you as attendants and those viewing on Murray's streaming video feed. So the commissioners here this evening, from your right to left, are Lisa Milkevich, Travis Ney, Phil Markham, myself, Ned Hacker, and Sue Wilson. And the commissioners that are excused this evening, Scott Woodbury and Maren Patterson. And the staff that are going to help us this evening, Jared Hall up here in front with Zachary Smallwood, and Brian Farnsworth sitting on the side on the right. So with that, I'd like to give you a few housekeeping rules that we like to follow. I'd ask you to please be respectful for all participants this evening. If you have an electronic device with you, I'd ask that you turn it off or turn it down, very far down. If you get a call, I'd ask that you take it out into the hallway. If you have a sidebar conversation, I would ask that you also take that out into the hallway and again, respect all of the people who are here tonight. If you want to make a comment regarding any of the agenda items, that is absolutely desired. We'd request that you limit your comments to 3 minutes per individual and 5 if you're speaking for a group. And we'll go over those when we get to our item that I think most of you are here for tonight, and we'll go from there. So, meeting agenda item number 1, approval of meeting minutes from our last meeting, November 21st. And I ask commissioners if you have any corrections to the meeting minutes that we reviewed in our pre-meeting, and or entertain a motion.
You just flipped to Apple TV, but I'll make a motion while they figure that out. Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion that we approve the Thursday, October 24th, 2019 Planning Commission and Hearing Officer Training Minutes as written.
All right, I have a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion approved. Item number 2, conflict of interest. I ask if the commissioners have conflict of interest.
No.
On any of the items on the agenda this evening?
No.
No.
And I do not either. And item number 3, approval of finding of facts. We have 2 finding of facts from our previous meeting, and ask if everybody had opportunity to review those.
Yes.
And if you have any comments, otherwise we'd entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion to approve the finding of fact and conclusions for AutoZone, a conditional use for AutoZone, and a conditional use permit for E&M Research and Development.
All right, I have a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second.
And a second. Is there any discussion? And I'd ask all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. So agenda item number 4 is Salt Lake Auto Sales, requesting a conditional use permit to allow for auto sale business to be located at the property address 4205 South Commerce Drive. Is applicant here this evening for that item? Okay, we'll have you come up in a little bit. Thank you. And Zachary Smallwood is going to give us a staff report for this item.
Thank you, Commissioner Hacker. Yeah, this is a conditional use permit application for an auto sales business for Salt Lake Auto Sales. Like you had stated, it's at 4205 South Commerce Drive, located here. This is Commerce, obviously. And then Humane Society is here, and I-15 just further to your left there. It is in the MG zone. Auto sales are a conditional use in this zone, so allowed subject to any conditions. The applicant is proposing to take a 215 square foot office space in the area. This is the existing building. It's a 3,600 square foot building, and I'm going to get this to fix again. I don't know why it's being temperamental today. All right. So it's a 3,600 square foot building. The applicant is going to be using the highlighted spaces for display vehicles, and then also has access to these 4 stalls as well for customer parking, and as well as these ADA spots as well. So we are requesting, so here's a couple photos of the site. These are the exact stalls that he would be reserved. And then, so we are requesting that you guys approve this use, subject to the 10 conditions. However, a couple things to go over. So he's going to be in Unit 4 here. This is that entrance that's located, here. And then, so some of the things that we'd like to address is the landscaping. Typically in this area, we require landscaping to be improved whenever we go through a conditional use. So we are asking that the applicant and the property owner work with staff to bring the property up to current city code when it comes to those landscaping ordinances. And additionally, the applicant will need to obtain a sign permit for the sign that was posted. I noticed this evening, or this afternoon, when I went out and shot some photos, that there is a sign for Salt Lake Auto Sales already up. So I will need to get a building permit for that, so that's all taken care of. Other than that, like I said, we are recommending approval subject to the 10 conditions that were listed in your staff report. Questions I can answer for you guys?
Should be one to go back to the street view. Sorry.
That one?
Yeah, so that's all asphalt then, correct?
Yeah, so, yes.
Okay. It's going to be difficult with the landscaping.
Yeah.
Okay.
Do we require an irrigation system as part of the landscaping improvements, or can they just plant the stuff and?
They would need, it would have to be irrigated, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Would it be appropriate to say something in our conditions tonight about the sign permit?
It should already state in there that he has to have
Number 9?
Oh, at the end,
Yeah.
sorry.
Yeah, he needs to have a permit for any attached or detached signage. We'll make sure that he gets that taken care of.
Any other questions? Go ahead.
I think there's some paperwork in our packet that the lease was signed in August. Has he already been operating now, the facility?
I don't believe he has been operating. It's just been, there was some confusion between having this be kind of where the sales office was and the storage of cars on another lot. And business license has been working with the applicant to kind of clear all that up.
All right. Anything else for staff? All right, thank you.
Thanks.
So will the applicant come up forward, please, to the podium and state your name and your address for the record?
The Noon Gravi.
And have you had an opportunity to read these 10 conditions for approval?
Yes, sir.
And are you able to comply with those?
Yes, sir.
Do you have anything in addition to the staff report that you'd like to submit to us?
No, not at the moment. Thanks.
All right. Any questions from the staff or from commissioners?
No.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I'll open this agenda item for public comment. If anyone would like to comment on this particular item, Salt Lake Auto Sales. Seeing none, I'll close public comment and bring it back to the commissioners for any discussion or a motion.
I'd like to make a motion that we approve the conditional use permit allowing the operation of an auto sales business at the property addressed 4205 South Commerce Drive, Unit Number 4, subject to conditions 1 through 10.
All right, I have a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second.
All right, is there any additional discussion? Jared, could you take a roll call vote, please?
Ms. Wilson?
Yes.
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 Yes. All right, motion passes. Good luck with your business, and thank you for establishing it in Murray. Okay, we'll go on to item number 5 on the agenda. Security National Life Insurance Company requesting a site plan approval for construction of a second building at the property addressed 433 West Ascension Way. Is the applicant here for that project? All right, we'll have you come up. And Jared Hall is going to give us a staff report.
Thank you. This is the application for a site plan for what is Building 2 of the Center 53 project center that Security National has been working on for some time. The project is actually, Building 2 will be located right here where their current office building is. There's a Taco Time on the corner that helps people kind of know where you're talking about. I'll get it out of the way right now that the Taco Time gets demolished in the building of the new building. So you can send me hate mail later. I'll accept all of it. The building 1 of this project is located right there. You've probably all seen the large parking structure to the rear of it. Future phases will include new buildings and new parking structures in other parts of the property that they control. But right now we're just looking at the site plan and building that's going to go here. On these properties in the CD zone. They're actually in the CD zone, so it requires that we go through a site plan and building review for that approval. The remainder of the project, or most of the remainder of the project, will be located in the GO zone and the general office zone. Did want to show you just some pictures. I have to credit Zach for the pictures. He climbed a parking structure, I believe, today to get these for me, right? So you can always count on Zach. You can see the new Building 1 from Security National is right there. This is the building that will be demolished to make way for the new building and temporary parking structure, and you can see the Taco Time there. So the new building is 6 stories like the existing Building 1. In their new master plan that's part of your packet tonight, so you can see how things all fit together, all new buildings will be 6-story buildings. So we don't have the differing heights, the 4 stories and the 8 stories or whatever. They'll all be 6-story buildings. Along with that, we'll come back to that in just a moment. Along with the new building, this is about just under 220,000 square feet of office space. So considering the square footage of the existing Building 1 added to this 220, we're approaching 450,000 square feet or so of Class A office space here. We haven't had that in the past in Murray, so we're excited about that. In this particular phase, it will include this new building, Building 2, a temporary parking lot to the west of it, to accommodate what we need. We have some additional parking that's still available in this first structure. As you remember, it was designed to handle more than just the parking needs of the Building 1. So some parking is still available in there, and then we'll have additional temporary parking lots constructed at this time because the applicants, Security National, are going to complete the roadway, the improvements in the widening of this roadway through the project and out north to Murray Boulevard as a part of this phase of the development. So all the improvements and the utilities go in for that road as part of this building and parking lot structure parking lot being built here. In total, the parking on the property, on the site, will be 1,644 parking stalls. That's with these temporary lots, and that's to serve both these buildings and some of the future development that will come in these other phases. Eventually, as the project is built out, these parking lots become parking structures and buildings as well. In the end, there won't be much surface parking on this property. It will mostly be in structure so that they can maintain that 1,640 some odd parking stalls is about a 5.5 to 6 stalls per 1,000 count. Newer Class A office wants those kind of parking counts, so that's what we're seeing here. To maintain that, they're going to need structures in the future when they add buildings. So this is a look at the future build out, and just kind of for fun, wanted to point out a couple of things. So the improvements that come, this plaza space in the crook of this building here matches the improvements on Building 1, so you get a kind of a project feel through. In the end, they hope to have a nice plaza in the middle with some amenity space and really have a nice office park when we reach build out. The new building, as I said, is about 220,000 square feet. It is associated with that parking structure for the time, or that parking lot for the time being. That'll be replaced by a parking structure. What we've done in planning with them with Public Works and working with the applicants is add the landscaping and light fixtures and the electrical and utilities that go with those that can be preserved as the structure takes its place in the next couple of years. So those improvements will be put in, but not full improvements for a parking lot. that we would normally expect because we don't intend the parking lot to stay. This is the building elevation showing you the materials that will be used for the northwest, the southeast. They're similar materials to building 1, although the building design is slightly different. It'll look similar and match that way. Some renderings that have been done. So this is looking from Ascension Way. You can see kind of the temporary parking lot and that plaza entrance. More from the 53rd side as you approach the building, and then from the freeway, from I-15. We are recommending approval, subject to some conditions. Most of these come from engineering. There's a large traffic study that's part of this whole build-out, this master plan. So the traffic study is bigger than just this phase, this site plan. Right now, it's the traffic study that we have in hand, and the analysis of it thus far shows that the building can be accommodated. They are still reviewing that traffic study, and there probably will be modifications made as they move forward to other phases. Trey, our city engineer, has engaged Joe Perrin, a traffic engineer of our own, to look at that whole study as well, and they're still looking at that. And we'll have updates for you periodically as we go through. But right now, they are recommending approval. The traffic study has shown that it can be handled with these conditions in place. Do you have any questions for staff at this point? Thank you.
Any questions for staff? No? Great, thank you.
Thanks.
So the applicant, come forward, please. State your name and address for the record.
Brandon Federico, 222 West, 925 North, Centerville, Utah.
And have you had opportunity to review these conditions for approval?
Yes.
And are you going to be able to comply with all of those?
Yes.
And do you have anything to add to the staff report?
We do not. Jared did an excellent job.
All right, thank you. All right, I will open this item for public comment. Any public comment on First Security or Security National Life Insurance Company item on the agenda? Seeing none, I'll close public comment and bring it back to the commission for discussion or a motion.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion that we approve the proposed site plan for Phase 2 of Center 53 and the associated improvements at the property address 433 West Ascension Way, subject to conditions 1 through 7.
All right, we have a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Go ahead, Sue. You have that.
I'll second.
All right, motion and a second. Any additional discussion?
I'm just sad about taco time.
Taco
It's
time is
big
a
rods,
loss.
Big rods.
All right. All right, Jared, could you call a roll call vote, please?
Yes.
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 Yes. All right, thank you, gentlemen, for doing business in Murray. We look forward to watching your project expand.
It's very
Thank you.
exciting.
And you'll have to find us a new place to get tots.
There were food trucks. I noticed the food trucks.
Just never the same. Oh. All right, we'll move on to agenda items number 6 and 7, and I say that we're going to handle them together. I'll talk about that in a little bit. So this is Van Winkle Crossing requesting approval of a master site plan and conditional use permit for 10.5 acres mixed-use development consisting of 421 multi-family units and 21,000 square feet of retail and commercial space to the property address 4670 South 900 East. So I said we'd do 6 and 7 on the agenda together. So both items are connected. Staff is going to give us one staff report. It would be the same staff report if regardless of the agenda item. And we can talk about them together as well. And when the action comes to the commission, we'll take 2 separate votes on the master site plan and the conditional use permit. So I know you are all here for this item, and I understand your concerns. I'd ask again that you respect the rest of the participants here. We'll give all of you opportunity to come and voice your concerns and opinions. And again, if you want to come up, we'll have you come up in an orderly fashion and note your concerns. All right. Jared Hall is going to give us staff report.
Thank you. So as you said, this is a review for a conditional use permit and a master site plan for Van Winkle Crossing. It is a mixed-use project. This is the old Kmart site, 4670 South, 900 East. It is 0.52 acres altogether. You can see the Ivy Place Shopping Center on the south side, and then 9th East. This is it was in the CD zone formerly. It's now in the mixed use zone. This is an illustrative site plan that was sent out with the notices to adjacent property owners. So I wanted to touch on a couple of things with this, but move on to the more detailed site plan as well. The most salient point to make at first is that this is a mixed-use project. So there is a planned 21,000 square feet of retail spaces along 900 East, and then to the rear would be the 421 units. This larger, I'll move right into parking here first off, just to kind of clear up a couple of things that came up in a lot of the comments that we did receive. We'll talk about public comment in a moment. We forwarded many emails to you. Did get a couple after the cutoff time, but we tried to answer those as best we could. In keeping with that, I did want to point out, just because it's a little deceptive in the notice site plan that went out, this center portion is not all units. This is a parking structure. The building style is called a wrap. So there are apartment buildings wrapping around a large central parking structure. So from the site plan, sometimes it can appear that the parking is fairly limited. There are a lot of parking stalls on the site that you can't see from that particular site plan, but this one looked a little messy on a notice, so we elected for the colored one. Total parking on the site, I'm going to get my numbers wrong, so I want to look that up. There are 723 total parking stalls on the site to accommodate the commercial and the residential units. There would be some sharing occurring with different parking stalls, again, at different hours in these areas that are more adjacent and more likely to be used that way. But again, we have been through, and you have the parking analysis in your report. It does meet our requirements for parking. Many of those parking stalls are located in this structure, and then ringing the buildings. We can talk about parking and access again more in just a moment, but the master site plan was required because this is a horizontal mixed-use development. And you might recall when we just made the changes to the mixed-use zone, one of the things we did was clarify horizontal versus vertical mixed-use development. So these buildings, the commercial buildings that can come, are going to be separated from these residential buildings. These are not residence over commercial structures. These are all residential structures, and they're balanced out in the mixed-use project by potential commercial development here on 900 East, totaling 21,000 square feet. That's based on our formula that we put into the code recently. They would be required to do just over 20,000 square feet. They proposed 21,000 square feet. One of the other components of the master plan was that there be a central feature of some kind that helped to kind of tie that commercial and residential portion of the project together. We wanted to see that, and they proposed it sort of on the north end between the greatest masses of the commercial and residential areas in the project. There's a central feature here that's a landscaped plaza. It's connected pretty well by the pedestrian connections throughout the project that we worked on with the developers as well. There'll be utilities planned into this area and provided into this area to accommodate food trucks and other kind of vendors that would come in here periodically and create the possibility of some events and that kind of thing. So it's a nice space. Visually, these materials are all the same, and they run throughout the site from 9th East, actually, through the commercial portions and on into the residential portions. A lot of times with horizontal mixed-use developments, you don't have that sort of visual and pedestrian connection. We really wanted to see that here, and we feel like we've done a good job of requiring that. Again, tied into that is that there are better pedestrian connections throughout the site, from the commercial to the residential, increasing that possibility that people that live in these projects will frequent these commercial establishments that come in, and then throughout the residential project as well. The streets, or the interior accesses, are designed to look and feel more like streets, with park strips and sidewalks and parking along the sides. So we're talking about access, so we might as well move on to talk about access. I want to come back to the main site plan. One of the other main things that we heard during the zoning hearings and from all of the different departments that did review this, from both Mill Creek and from Murray City, was that this access from the neighborhood on the west, 4680 South, it's a public street that dead ends into the project, needed to remain open so that there was open access from that neighborhood out to 900 East, as there has been for many years. The developers have agreed to keep that open. It's not going to be a dedicated road. It'll be part of the project. But this portion as well, I just want to point this out. This portion right now, we've shown it open, but it will be redesigned by the agreements we have with the developers and the conditions of the approval to look more like these areas here. So it'll function more like a street. The pedestrian sidewalk's missing right now. That'll be added We didn't want to send a notice out that didn't show it open, but there wasn't time to finish the redesign, so we'll be working with them going forward on that redesign of that area.
For those sidewalks, will those be required to be the 7-foot sidewalks as well?
Well, these are interior, so these aren't 7 foot like the public access, like the public improvements. Out here on 900 West, we have the 900 East, thank you. We have the 7-foot sidewalks and 8-foot park strips out here. On the interior, they're not that wide.
So it's going to be traditional,
more traditional
3-foot,
sidewalks
4-foot.
and park
Yeah,
strips.
probably 4 foot.
Yep. They'll still be usable, but not
Yeah,
the
yeah.
7-footers. One other thing to kind of indicate here. So this access remaining open will be part of the memorandum of understanding, and that brings us to that point. Horizontal mixed-use developments require a memorandum of understanding that'll be agreed to by the city council and the developers to create this. That's to assure that we get the kinds of commercial development that balances out that residential portion and keeps everything functioning like a true mixed-use project. One of the things that's included in this phase 1 that we're looking at tonight, there'll be 300 units included in phase 1, or just about 300 units. You guys can correct me when you come up if I'm wrong. I believe about 300 units. The first 2 buildings here, residentially, that provides us that parking structure that's needed to make sure all the parking works. And then the utilities and infrastructure for these commercial buildings will also be part of phase 1 and installed with phase 1. That's a significant financial commitment that makes sure that we get those buildings in the future. Part of the reason for wanting those buildings to come after the residential gets started is that when the residential starts coming up out of the ground, you get better commercial and retail uses pitching you for these pad sites. It really improves that, the quality of the caliber of the commercial that you get. So with the commitment of those utilities and the connections there, we feel like we'll be fine. We also required in the memorandum of understanding. That memorandum is a contract basically between the city and the developers. And it'll be binding on successors and assigns, so anybody that buys the project or deals with the project will have to deal with that contract with the city as well. That'll maintain that access open. That'll assure those commercial pads stay commercial and don't get converted to residential in the future. That'll keep the parking structure accessible to the tenants that need it, so we don't create a parking problem. Those kind of things. Those kinds of things are all in your report as parts of the memorandum of understanding. You don't, as the Planning Commission, make that agreement. The City Council can make that agreement. You're not allowed to make those kinds of contracts.
And
The City Council
Jared,
can.
as part of that, it is potentially possible that roundabout would disappear, right? Depending
thank you. That's
input from public safety.
That's a good comment. Public safety, as I mentioned, every department that reviewed this, we didn't have any departments that reviewed it that didn't want to see that access remain open. Public safety first and foremost among them. And their original recommendation to you that made it into your report was for denial if this access wasn't open. The access is now open. They've been provided with copies of the new plans, and they'll be involved in the redesign of this part of the project as well. And part of that would also be making sure that this roundabout functions for them. It's technically wide enough. It's 20 feet. That's typically the kind of width they want to see. But if that's not wide enough for them to be confident with it, the developers will be willing to make modifications here. The roundabout used to be what they originally proposed this roundabout for was as the central feature. Planning staff wasn't happy with that as a central feature because it's a vehicular traffic improvement. We wanted a pedestrian-oriented central feature, so it was moved here. In some ways, that roundabout has remained without the purpose that it originally served. It's still a nice feature. If we can keep it, it might need to be shrunk. So, but thanks for bringing that up, Phil. So the access was a principal concern to everyone.
And Jared, while you're saying something about that public feature,
Yeah.
what's the likelihood of that remaining versus commercial buildings being built there?
Sure, that's a good question as well. So that can be part of the memorandum of understanding as well. That these side improvements that are proposed are tied to as exhibits to that MOU. Sorry, and I'll use the shorthand because I'm going to stumble over memorandum of understanding all night. The MOU will have site plans attached to it. So any changes that get made to that have to be agreed to by the parties.
Okay, good.
Okay, good.
And frankly too, these are the kind of amenities that the rental market demands now. They're putting coffee shops in their basement and their ground floors and things just to get people to want to fund the projects at this point. The demand in rental is changing. So a couple of other I wanted to just point out too. This is a photograph of a feature up in Ned, where's your office? It's in the gateway, just west of the gateway. And it just so happens that it's a circular plaza type feature with 5-story buildings adjacent to it. So this is the kind of massing that you would expect to see when you're on the project itself. So again, we talked about the number of units. There are 421 units. Only 32 of them are 3-bedroom units. The great majority of them are 2 1-bedroom and studio units. They do have a couple of other features. They have a clubhouse and a leasing office, et cetera, a large pool and deck there as part of the main building as well. So when you're going through the project, as you enter the project from 9th East or from the other side, my finger's not working anymore, and driving past this, the point of the roundabout was to pause you and make you look at this nice kind of opening feature for the first building, and then you're going past the swimming pool as well. Again, this is building what we would call building A, the furthest west building, 4 stories. It's more of a kind of a shoebox building. These are elevations, the planned units, the kind of materials that we're talking about using, some different kinds of siding, some brick veneer and block, windows, wrought iron, et cetera. They're nice units. They have some of these others available in other parts of the valley that you can see down in the district, et cetera. This is an elevation of building A, the one that we were just talking about. There are some variations that are nice, so that it breaks up that roof line a little bit. We have some flat roofed areas along with the pitches. More elevations. A little bit of a close up for you to see the kind of the brick veneer and block there, mixing with the siding. There's some good color variations without being, I don't want to say obnoxious when I'm giving a formal report, but I don't know another word to use. It's color variation without being obnoxious. We kind of appreciate that. Let me come back to one thing here before we get to the recommendations. Height was a concern. We did verify. This is a project that we look at kind of 3 big basic things. The residential density. We allow 40 units per acre this far from transit stations. Mixed-use zones in Murray have typically been around transit stations. This is not near a transit station. That was recognized when we made changes to the amendments to the mixed-use zone not long ago. One of those significant changes was adding a gradient for density. So you go down from 100 units per acre near the stations to outside of a mile, you can't do more than 40 units per acre in a mixed-use zone or a mixed-use project. We allow 40. This is a 40-unit per acre project residentially.
Jared, can I ask you to expand on the idea just for a second because of the lingo that we're not maybe all familiar with?
Sure.
So when I'm hearing you say that the mixed-use zone is kind of the European idea of a high-density community where everybody hopefully walks because everything's in walking distance, and that's why it's ideal by a transit system?
Yes and no. By a transit system, yes. Around a transit station, you can accommodate 100 units per acre because there's a greater likelihood that people can walk right to a station. In this kind of outlying area, we used the mixed-use zone because we didn't have another zone. But you might call this a village center zone or something if we had written it separately from our mixed-use zone. What we did was just add components to our existing mixed-use zone that we use around transit stations that would downgrade that density residentially and allow that horizontal mixed use that's much more likely when you get into a village area like this or an outlying area like this, but still allow mixed use, which is a popular development style and a kind of a needed use in the valley right now. So what you get here is some trip reduction from the likelihood that people in the project will use some of those services that are there and even avail themselves of buses that might be on 9th East or whatever, but you're not going to have the same number of those people utilizing the track station because they're not as close to it. By definition, they're a mile away. They're more than a mile away. So we get some benefit for traffic reduction and parking reduction, but not as much as we would near the station. Right. So it's more of a village center.
But you're taking that in consideration by reducing numbers. And also the idea is somewhat a little bit that you'll walk, maybe hopefully walk to the grocery store, walk to restaurants around, and maybe reduce the trip reduction was the term you used, right?
Yeah, some trip reduction does occur. Not as much as when we're right near a station, but that's why the density is reduced as well, to kind of reflect that. Does that make sense? Yep. The other thing to keep in mind is we do have height allowances in the mixed-use zone. The only constraint on the mixed-use zone height allowance is proximity to residential zoning. So that was looked at very carefully here. Beyond that first 100 feet, within the first 100 feet of residential zoning, you're only allowed 50 feet of height. Building A is only allowed 50 feet of height. It's closer than, it's that 100 mark from the residential zoning. Building B, the larger building in the middle, that we show as a 5-story, this is a 5-story structure because it's far enough away from the residential to accommodate that. Here, we're not. That's a 4-story because we can only accommodate the 50 feet in height. But the height, I know that's an issue that a lot of people have brought up. It came up in the emails. It's come up in the phone calls that we've had. The height's been looked at very, very carefully. We're within the allowances here.
And just for clarification, for those that don't speak the language, how close is this building in comparison to the Walmart that's currently there?
To the
Walmart's
Kmart
close.
building? That's
I'm sorry,
currently there?
Kmart. One of those.
The Kmart building sits just a little bit closer than this particular building.
So it's a little bit further back.
It's a little further back, and it's taller than the Kmart building. The Kmart building's not 50 feet tall. This is taller, but it is a little further back. We do also, another thing to point out, and it's not shown well on the colored plan, Kmart wasn't buffered from this neighborhood at all either. And buffers are what they are. We'll require trees and landscaping in this buffer. We're recommending that there's a masonry wall installed as well. A lot of the buffer is just the fences that people have put up in their backyards. It's not, the Kmart wasn't very appropriately buffered at all. These are residential structures, but they still need to be buffered. Higher density multifamily, this needs a buffer. So we're recommending this. This is a 10-foot required buffer. It'll have a masonry wall here as part of the MOU as well, but that be maintained and kept in place. They're going to want that anyway, the developers as well. But we want to see that buffer go in.
What's the height on that masonry wall?
We didn't set it. It would be at least 6. It could be up to 8.
Up to 8 feet?
Yeah.
And when would that be determined, the height of the wall?
That's up to you. If we feel like we want an 8-foot wall, that could be discussed tonight. 6 is the minimum we would require. 8 is the maximum that the code would allow for a buffer wall. A couple other things just to note. We had asked them to provide pedestrian connections throughout as a part of that zoning. They've done that. You can get out of these units out into this nice kind of landscaped pedestrian area between the buildings. The buildings are arranged to face kind of the accesses as much as possible instead of just a parking lot, so it's a more pleasant experience to live here and walk here. Anything we can do to encourage people to get out of the buildings and walk so that we are reducing trips is what we want to see. So that's what we've tried to encourage through the design process with the applicants. We do feel like we've been able to do that, and we want to recommend that the master plan and the conditional use permit be approved tonight with these conditions. Many of these come from engineering, and they involve a traffic study that's been done, maintaining that open access, reviewing with fire and making sure that access works for emergency services correctly, seeing the MOU be put in place so that we get guarantees of those different elements that we want to see, and things of that nature. Are there any questions? Do you have any questions for staff at this point?
Jared, as far as construction time, time frame, when they're constructing, like how late in the day could construction go? I'm concerned about the
question.
neighborhood,
That's
and I don't want to have stuff banging and backing up and beepers going all hours of the night.
That's a really good question. So normal construction hours are what we would allow. That's based on the health code for sound ordinance. So between 7 a.m. and 10 p.m. there can't be
10
construction
p.m.
noise.
They
can go as late as 10 p.m. under the normal health codes.
Is there any authority we would have to modify that at all?
I don't see that typically, but I can't fully answer that question. I'm sorry.
Okay.
So we're talking about construction. Is that access stay open during construction?
Access would have to remain open during construction as well. We'll make that part of the MOU. The access was important enough to the safety personnel that we wouldn't want to see that closed down or impacted during construction as well. It's a 10.5 acre site. If they can't stage for these buildings without closing that access, they shouldn't be building. It'll be okay.
Mm-hmm. Will they be required to cone off that access so that?
Yeah. This is a big enough, well, I'm sorry, I might have misunderstood. I was thinking about security for the building site so that kids from the neighborhood, et cetera, don't get in there.
I'm thinking like an LOD where you have to maintain a perimeter so that the residents would still have unlimited access to their subdivision and not have to worry about a tractor being parked in the right of way.
Identified one. That's a great suggestion and necessary. We usually handle that kind of thing during the building phase. During construction, we would require it. But it's good to bring it up during entitlement as well. That access needs to stay open, and it needs to be large enough and open for emergency services during construction as well. The site will need to be fenced and secured as well because this is significant construction, and it's near some residential and near a lot of use for traffic in and out of that residential. We'd want to be sure that the site's secured. We usually do all of that through the building phase.
Okay, so when they're doing that in the building phase and getting their perimeter construction fencing, we can designate that they need to do that with a proper easement for that street.
And you'd notice as well that the one of the conditions from engineering is that they obtain a land disturbance permit and run a
Okay.
SWIP. Those things also will dictate that access width and keep it open.
Okay, good.
Yeah, please.
I'm sorry, I don't remember who asked the question. I think it may have been you, Phil. I just did quick analysis on it. So currently Kmart between the fence line to the building is 38 feet. And at least what I can tell on the plans, it's approximately 70, 75 feet between probably where the fence line would be to
The face of the building?
the face of the building will be 100 feet, but to the end of the sidewalk kind of there, but from that will be 100 feet between those two
That's
for the building.
That's
So
a nice thing to hear. It's a bigger gap than it currently is.
It's a bit bigger buffer because you have 18 feet of purely of landscaping buffer along that side, and then you also then have a row of parking, a drive aisle, another row of parking, and then landscaping building. So you get a space there of approximately about 100 feet. So I just wanted to address that.
So I wanted to, this is a big project. I think it makes a lot of people nervous, myself included, reading through the packet. I mean, the world's growing. Murray's growing. We can't tell people to go away. You couldn't tell me to go away when I moved here, right? We're all going to live here together happily. But the biggest concern that I saw was traffic. And I feel like the city, in conjunction with the Miller Creek City, does a great job problem solving all these things. And we've thought through a lot of it, but I think it's only fair to talk about it for a second so that everyone knows we've talked about it.
Sure.
And thought about it. The traffic study. So, I had a lot of questions about the traffic study because I was concerned about the traffic. And it looks like, from the traffic study, the concern is not so much on the west side of Mill Creek because they're not anticipating large increases in that direction. The anticipation is increases in traffic on 900 East.
Correct.
Right?
From the project standpoint, a lot of the neighbors' concerns have been whether this project is going to generate traffic going west through their neighborhood, and with the signal on 900 East and the proximity, most of the mass of the building and the buildings on the project are going to be coming in and out of 900 East. The traffic study kind of indicates that we're not going to see westward movement typically from this project through the neighborhood, because it's an indirect route and it takes you to a northbound only.
So there's no way to accurate 100% know for sure. It's all estimates, and we're doing our best to
The only
estimate.
100%
right?
way to know that there was no traffic from the site through the west neighborhood would be to close the access.
And that's not an option.
Not for me.
No. So then I wanted to talk more about the traffic study because it makes me nervous. Yeah. And I realize when we have traffic increases, which we will, period.
Sure.
Cities grow. There's only a few ways you can address them. You can't tell people to go away, but you can try to improve the traffic patterns.
Sure.
Right? And so the intent, and I understand the traffic study was to look at the current traffic, see how we're going to increase it, and see what we could do to make sure it's fluent. Right? So they made some suggestions of adding left turn lanes. They made some suggestions of right in, right out. What other suggestions did they make? And also in the
timing of the traffic lights will need to be adjusted to help accommodate that. So the traffic study didn't just look at this particular intersection and the likely traffic from this new development. It also looked at the impact of this development on the traffic lights at 45th South and 900 East, and the traffic lights on Van Winkle and 900 East, and even the next one down on Van Winkle, I believe. And so looking at all of those, they said if we adjust the timing of those lights, we can keep the levels of service at all of those intersections flowing above D's. So that's the plan.
because
That should be accommodatable, again, with the pockets for left-hand turning, et cetera, that you mentioned. And that, again, all serves to kind of guarantee or further encourage people to use those lights in 900 East rather than the westbound indirect route through the neighborhood.
we all live here and use that area too. So we all have the same concerns. And so it's like I said, it's good to hear we're trying to address them
Sure.
in a polite way for everyone involved.
Appreciate that.
So.
And at the end of the day, the traffic study basically says that this intersection proper at 4705 is going to be basically the same level of service. The areas that are impacted are actually the Walmart access points. Their level of service decreases. It makes it harder to do a left-hand turn out of there. And then further up at the top of the hill, that intersection right there, it's also going to be harder to do left-hand turns out of there. That's the gist
really
of
the
what the
gist.
traffic study said.
And that's
Didn't the study say that those two spots are performing poorly? And I felt like Trey wanted to consider that further.
Yeah, they are performing poorly. And in the big scheme of things, the traffic study did look out at 2025 and 2030 as well. So it was projecting future growth in general, not just this project proper.
Yeah, other likely growth. And it all kind of points back to what Commissioner Milkevich said. This is growth we have to expect. We have to find ways to accommodate. It's happening everywhere. That happens here as well. Our main interest as staff is that we feel like a mixed-use development, and we did when we recommended approving the zone change, that a mixed-use development on this site does more good for the region, the larger region, than a regular development would, or than a straight multifamily development would, for example. So, any other questions for staff?
Since everyone's not privy to the packet, can we talk about sewer, power, all of that? Do you want to just kind of give some highlights on that?
Yeah, that's a good comment. One of the other questions or concerns that we always deal with in entitlement like this is can the project be accommodated by infrastructure, not just traffic and access, et cetera, but sewer, water, power, et cetera. Now, in this area, Murray doesn't provide all of those services. We typically do. Most of the projects that we look at were for Murray City utilities. Murray City Power does provide service here, and they can accommodate. They've all provided will-serve letters. Will-serve letters are basically, we give them the plans and the numbers that they're going to be dealing with and ask them if they can accommodate that or what they need to do to accommodate that. The developers are tasked with going to them with those kinds of projects. What they did in this case was approach Murray Power. Murray Power said, yes, we can serve it. Mount Olympus Sewer is the sewer district here. They've given a will-serve letter as well. They don't feel like there's any problem that they can't accommodate on the site. It's Jordan Valley Water Conservancy. They've also signed off and given a will-serve letter for the project. No concerns there. In addition, they did receive will-serve letters from not Questar anymore. Dominion, that's the ones. From the gas company, thank you, as well. So
The group I don't know if we've discussed yet is the school district. Again, the school district can't tell you no, go away, but we can help them anticipate the growth.
we did speak to Rock Boyer at Murray School District. So this will be, the elementary school kids are usually the challenge for these developments. They're served Parkside. They might have to look at busing, but taking the numbers, Rock looked at the numbers of units, and not just the numbers of units, but the bedroom numbers as well. So the impact won't be too great on the school district that he's worried about it at all. But he wanted to take it into accommodation or take it into consideration as they look at the new school years coming up the next 5 years. They didn't feel like there was a challenge there. So.
And then you've also had communication with Mill Creek City. Can
Correct.
you give a little information on what Mill Creek City has said on this?
Yeah, thank you. We tried to involve Mill Creek all the way through because it does impact their residents and their businesses on the other side of 9th East more so than it does anybody in Murray at this point. So we reached out to Councilwoman Catton, I don't want to say her name wrong.
I believe.
Catton, and she's had some conversations with Melinda, our director. We did receive some comments from her. One of her chief comments was the maintenance of that access open. We reached out to Mill Creek City Engineering as well. They had virtually the same comments that our city engineer had. He was heartened to see the kind of same concerns and issues. We responded to those through Trey's comments as well. Mill Creek City Planning, we did receive, too late for you guys to receive it in your packet or as part of your formal review. We did receive a letter from Frank Lilly with Mill Creek City Planning as well. Many of the same concerns that we tried to address throughout the staff report here, chief among them being the access. And then he did encourage us at the end of his letter to try to encourage the development in any way possible not to impact that neighborhood with traffic. But basically, we've addressed the concerns that Frank had addressed or had brought up as well in his letter. So,
Jared, there were no formal objections from
no.
Mill Creek City.
Unified Fire and Unified Police were also contacted about this, had the same concerns as our Murray City Fire and Police. Unified is technically the district here. Murray City winds up responding for emergency services a lot of times as well, so we wanted all of them to be involved. We didn't receive any formal objections other than the opening of that
Right.
access.
The road was key in all of the communication.
Correct. Anything else?
I think you deserve a break.
Is the applicant here? this evening? You come up and state your name and your address for the record, please.
Ryan Kimball, 1000 South Main Street, Salt Lake City.
And have you had an opportunity to read the conditions for approval?
Yes, excuse me, I have.
Are you able to comply with those?
Yeah, I wanted to clarify just with, we did speak with Jared about this, but recommendation E and F, where on E it says move east access on 4750 South 100 feet. That comment was from a prior site plan, and it has been communicated to us that that's been addressed. So,
Addressed in this plan.
Okay.
We don't like to change the engineer's comments if we don't absolutely have to.
and then as well as item F was addressed in that same previous site plan. So other than those two that have already been taken care of, we'll comply with those.
All right. Would you like to add anything to Jared's report?
No, I'm glad he gave it, not me. The only thing I would add is one of the access points that benefits this development is our south access through Ivy Place, and that provides a right-hand turn straight onto Van Winkle. So I just wanted to make the residents aware that just from a practical standpoint on egress, Jared, I believe, has hit it spot on. They'll likely just go straight out to the signal. Or they would shortcut through Ivy Place and go out and make that right-hand turn towards I-15 down Van Winkle. So there really is no good reason to it's a long cut to go through the neighborhood to the west. So that wasn't mentioned. I thought it may put some concerns to rest. Ivy Place commercial, we've talked to all of them. They're very excited about this. They feel it will benefit their commercial that has lately suffered. And lastly, we'll work with staff and planning on this, but clearly the road will have construction. And so to the extent that remains open 100% of the time during construction, it may be an impractical promise, but clearly while we're asphalting and resurfacing, that just needs to be taken into account. So probably didn't need to be noted, but just didn't want anyone to think we weren't being upfront on that if it didn't go mentioned. Other than that, we're excited. Appreciate
Commissioners
staff
have any
support.
questions?
I have a feeling that you may see an amendment to recommendation number 8 to include an 8-foot masonry wall rather than a standard 6-foot.
Yes.
Just wanted to give you a heads up on that and make you aware of that.
No problem. I mean, in the past, on developments when we've done that, it's been supported by a pedestrian view and the angle and what that benefit truly is. If there's a true benefit, then of course we would comply. I would just ask that it not be requested just to request something. If it doesn't truly carry a benefit, the 8-foot wall. Sometimes, I mean, we're far enough away that how much benefit does that extra 2 feet do? But we would look into it, and if you demand it at this moment, then so be it.
Another thing that's not conditioned, but I would really encourage, at least based off of what we see here on display right now, is that southern access out of the neighborhood through your development. I would really encourage you to make sure that there's good quality pedestrian access for people in the neighborhood to get through to your development, because they will be using the retail spaces up front, and just the best access that they can have to it, the safest access that they can have to it. I would really encourage that.
You're saying from the neighborhood heading eastward?
From the neighborhood in the west heading eastward into
Yes,
your
of course,
project.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we hope they patron the commercial. Of course, we'd love
Exactly.
to do that, for
Exactly.
sure.
There was a question earlier about the time frame of construction.
Yes.
You have an idea?
I mean,
Is it a 2-year project or 6 months?
frankly, we haven't gotten that far. But thinking out loud and what we do know, our intent is to work through the building department with construction drawings through the winter, and try to tee up a demolition when the spring breaks and it's not so wet. And then as far as how many, Steven's here. He's with the partnering with the construction team, but I would guess it's around a 22-month, 24-month first phase total construction
For phase 1?
for phase 1. And then it's market driven, frankly, from on the lease up and everything else before we'd come back, and clearly to comply with the commercial, then we'd come in with phase 2. That's anyone's guess. I don't know that.
That's a little scary, though.
I think that's a very realistic time frame. I think it's an aggressive time frame, honestly. It's a big project, and there's a lot to get squared away, so.
The 22, 24 month makes perfect sense, but market-based when the rest of it occurs.
I think, look at the last project we just reviewed. They came in, it's been 4 years, they're just starting their second building. I think it's very realistic for a project of this cost and this magnitude to have to phase it over years.
Yeah. And frankly, I mean, our residents are going to want to live through a construction zone, okay? And so we're going to button up the site on initial lease up. Over the last few years, lease up has gone anywhere from 15 units a month to 20, 25 units a month. And so you do the math on 300 units, it's going to take some time. And lenders are going to want to see that get substantially filled before they will let us go on the next phase. So it can't be a promise I make it this time, but it behooves all of us to move this through quickly. That's what we all want.
And these are the two largest buildings as well, so the smaller buildings will take less time to construct when they do start.
That's true.
Any other questions? By the
Well,
commissioners?
I may have more after
right.
we've done public comments, but.
Of course.
All right, thank you very much. Okay, I will open this agenda item for public comment. So this is public comment regarding the master site plan and the action for conditional use approval. Open for public comment. So anyone like to comment, please come forward and state your name and your address for the record.
Who needs the form? Is that
Sure, give it to Jared there. That's fine. Thank you.
my comments also?
And your name and your address for the record?
My name is Deborah Hoyt. I live at 814 Green Valley Drive in Mill Creek. That is part of the Green Valley subdivision. I've been a resident of the Green Valley subdivision adjacent to the Kmart property for 41 years. I have concerns regarding the development of the subject property. I appreciate the efforts of the developers to maintain the access to the street 4705 South for current and future residents of the subdivision and development. Traffic in the area is already at peak traffic flow, and the addition of 421 residential units plus retail development may exceed the available capacity, particularly during rush hour. Buildings exceeding 3 stories are not consistent with our development in the area. Nearby multifamily developments include Cottonwood Apartments and Quailbrook condominiums, both of which are 3 stories in height. The nearest 5-story residential developments are located south of 39th South on 9th East between 45th South and 39th South west of Main Street. Buildings of 2 stories or less would be more acceptable for these developments, which are adjacent to single-family residences. The population density of the development of 421 units in the 11-acre site, I'm sorry, I rounded that up, would be 38.27 residences per acre, which far exceeds the density in nearby area and in the majority of Murray City. Overtaxing of water, sewer, and other infrastructure should be carefully considered prior to approving this development. Fourth, parking for the project appears to be inadequate. When occupied, most of the residences would be occupied by 2 or more adult individuals. A minimum of 2 parking spaces for each unit would be needed to accommodate the vehicles for each residence, plus additional parking would be required for the businesses. While I recognize that the mixed-use zoning of the property allows some leeway in structures and development, I feel it is in the best interest of the area to restrict the number of residences to 200 or less. Thank you for your consideration of my concerns.
Thank you very much. Please come forward, state your name and your record. Name and your address for the record.
My name is Peter Meslick, and I live on 4654 Namble Way. I've been there for 44 years. And the house is paid for. It makes it kind of hard to move. But anyway, my concern is the parking and when you have 421 units, how many people per unit? And
We can get you an answer for that.
Pardon?
We can ask for staff to give us an answer for that.
Okay. And then on the parking, how many cars per unit.
We'll have staff address that also.
Okay, and I'm concerned about, I know everybody's concerned about access coming into our neighborhood, but when you have that many people on the west side of the building, all these parking spots, I don't know how many you have there. I think he mentioned 723 parking spots. Is that just in this one area?
No.
No.
There's a parking structure.
And so that includes the parking on the west side of the buildings and the parking structure?
Yes, we'll have staff address the exact numbers for you.
So anyway, that's what I'm concerned about, because it's been a good little neighborhood. No crime, hardly. And we got good neighbors. And this is what I'm concerned about, is people that park along there and on the north side using the access on coming out off the west side. That's what my concern is. A lot of people are going to use that and come through the neighborhood.
Why would they?
That's about all I got, and most of that stuff you guys answered my questions. So
We can get staff to answer it a little bit better.
okay, well, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Rob Bennett. I live at 4700 South Namba Way. I've lived there since 1979. We're all very concerned about the increased traffic that will happen through our neighborhood. This project has a name of Van Winkle Crossing. Our neighborhood will be used as the method to cross over to Van Winkle. Kmart was built in 1968. At its capacity, it had about 300 parking stalls. This project is going to host between 700 and 800 parking stalls. The parking stalls on the north side and the west side of this project will, in fact, go through our neighborhood. It is the path of least resistance, especially in the morning for rush hour. We have concerns about the noise. We have concerns about emergency services. We have concerns about the sewer capacity and whether or not that will back up into our homes. As was stated previously, this project is far denser than the surrounding apartments in the Murray Holiday area. We're basically being asked to be neighbors to a gateway style project. It is of a far more higher magnitude than I think anybody anticipated. This project will not benefit our neighborhood. It needs to be stopped or reduced. Thank you.
Thank you. Please come to the podium and state your name and your address for the record.
My name is Renee Matsura, and I live on 4679 Green Valley Drive. I've been there since 1974. I've even had a lot of the children that grew up in that area move back to that subdivision. And they've now, some of them stayed, some of them moved. My concern is the height of the building. I don't know how many apartments are built in Murray area that are 5 stories high that look into the backyards of the residences on the west side. They will look directly into there, plus probably throughout the neighborhood if it's that tall. And that, I don't know, that concerns me. For them, you know, they don't have any privacy for that. The other is, they were talking about the sewer issue. I happen to live right across the street for the access for all the water that comes in, electrical power, whatever. We continually have sewer issues that they are cleaning that on a continuous basis. So, you know, when you're telling us that you've received approval, I'm really hoping that, you know, they are going to consider that, because I don't think we want to have sewer in our homes. You know, like this gentleman said before, we're older. We don't want to move. We've got our homes paid for. That's difficult for us to try to handle what's going on right now. And we do understand that things change. But I do agree on that density of the number of apartments that's going to be there. So, you know, I don't know how they could make any change, but if I were an apartment owner, I don't think I want to overlook someone's backyard. But if that's what they like to do, I guess, you know, that's their concern when they do buy the units. But thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Steve Anamoto. You folks have seen me, third time now. We hear that you've got will serve letters from Mount Olympus, the various utilities, but that doesn't guarantee that there won't be a problem down the road. Will serve means that they're going to try and develop the system to take care of your project. We are mechanically below a great deal of that project, and the lady is right. If there's a sewer problem, and our subdivision has historically had sewer problems and sewer evacuation problems. If there's a sewer problem that has not been anticipated, then we're going to end up suffering until that is solved. The same thing goes with the traffic. I know that we all have great ideas as to the best route, but in reality, what we've seen over time is that anytime we have access to the subdivision from outside, people will just drive through there slowly because they need to make a call on their way out. It is the quickest way to Van Winkle, and when traffic gets heavy, our subdivision gets utilized as people try to figure out a way around traffic. I'm afraid that if we add 421 units in here, we're going to be adding a situation that is very difficult to recover from. And what I'm concerned about is I don't see any way for you folks to indemnify us against these problems in the future, or to address these problems in the future. And it's with that in mind that I'm hoping that you will consider reducing the height of these buildings to 3 stories to match the surrounding neighborhood, to reduce the risk of these pressure head problems with the sewer, and to reduce the amount of traffic that we are invariably going to face. I mean, we all know how it works. We make these studies, but the truth in the matter is things don't always work out the way that the studies suggest, and we're trapped. Once again, as you've heard, we have a small neighborhood with a lot of folks that couldn't afford to move, don't want to have to move, and we're hoping that you folks will be good neighbors and not put a massive structure that's going to be looking into our yards. I'm on the far side of the subdivision. I didn't get a notice. I'm outside of the 300 foot, but within the 600 foot. A structure that height will definitely still be looking right into my front yard, even from that distance. So I'm really hoping that, number one, you reduce the height of the project. I realize the project has to happen. We have to move forward. But I think that we're being too aggressive with the height, and I'm hoping that you consider reducing the height to 3 stories at the absolute maximum. And then the other thing is we need to figure out a way to indemnify the people that live in this neighborhood against problems that crop up. The problems are going to be the sewer and the traffic and the construction. And unless there's some way for us to be able to access you folks and come to you with our concerns, we're Mill Creek City, not Murray City. So we have that interchange problem where we don't seem to be able to communicate with you folks very well, and that's a serious problem. And then the last thing, I heard Mr. Hall mention that they've worked with Mill Creek. I dropped this notice off at Mill Creek Town Hall last Tuesday. Tom, the Mill Creek City Planner, was not aware of it. So I don't think we've got all of our I's dotted and our T's crossed. I'm hoping that we can move more slowly and reduce the size of the structure.
Your time's up.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Lydia Kane, and I live at 4622 Green Valley Drive, and I work downtown, so every day I go out of the neighborhood and turn right onto Van Winkle to get onto 7th, which I found to be the quickest way downtown. And so these parking lots along the west and north, I doubt if any of them are going downtown. They're going to be going out to the light and turning left, and then turning left again at some point to get on 7th, which is the quickest way downtown. I feel like they're going to go through the neighborhood, and there's going to be a backlog in front of our houses where I turn right to go out to work, and there's going to be a line every morning at 9 a.m. Thank you.
Thank you.
Christian Mansfield. I live at 4626 Namba Way. I appreciate the concerns that have been mentioned so far, and I do also appreciate the effort to develop this area. It is going to be of great value to develop something here, but I do also share the concerns primarily about the height. It is very much out of character with that area. It seems like the heights and the densities were chosen to be within the legal maximums, but as close to them as possible. And this neighborhood is not a neighborhood that has been characterized by maximal density or maximal height. These structures they will stand out very strongly, and they'll also very much tower over the residential structures nearby. One lesser concern that I have that I haven't heard addressed, it looks to me like the main access point on 900 East, that road, that intersection, it looks like that is a wider roadway heading to the west from 900 East than is currently present, and that's good to be able to have vehicles turning left, turning right, and entering at the same time would be a big increase in traffic movement. However, it should also be noted that there's a very deep dip at that point, and that slows traffic considerably going into or out of that intersection. I strongly recommend the developer be required to regrade that so that traffic can proceed more quickly and more smoothly. I think that would allow a considerably larger number of cars to move through there each light cycle. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
I'm Sally Steele, live at 716 East 4660 South. And this is the very first that I've heard about this project. 4660 South, the street that we live off of. My family, I'm not this old, but we have lived there for over 45 years now. And this is literally the first we have heard about this. 4660 South is that teeny little road that connects the neighborhood to the Van Winkle Expressway turning into 7th East. So this is literally in front of our house, that any of this weird traffic coming from this development and any neighborhood traffic that we currently have will be going past. So in reference to the idea of someone going downtown, and we've all had jobs in my home, everyone has had a job where we do go further north. And that's absolutely something that we deal with. You need to go that way, and it really is being idealistic to a fault to actually expect that that the residents of these developments are not going to turn and go north on 7th East. That is just, I understand the traffic study, but I don't think that's really been taken into consideration. The other thing I just wanted to mention really quick, I do agree that we need to reduce the height of the structures. I think it is ridiculous, the thought of having four stories directly next in the building A, or whatever that building was, that's directly abutting the residences. I think that 4 stories, even if it's 100 feet away, that is just way too high. I also think that an 8-foot wall is the least that we can do. I'm sorry, but 8 feet going from 100 feet high, or going from 4 stories high with 100 feet of clearance, I don't care what that actually looks like. That is just too high. That is not going to work. I'd also like to propose that something be kind of examined a little further on the west entrance or exit from the neighborhood, like I said, it's directly in front of our house. That's going to be a pile up. I'm sorry, but to think it isn't is just not thinking it through clearly. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Hi, my name is Kelly Mansfield. My address is 4626 South Namba Way. Like everybody here, I think there are some good things and bad things about this development. First of all, the question nobody's asked that's really important to me is what's happening to Java Joe's. I think that's a lot more important than a taco time. But aside from that, the building height is concerning because for sure when you're looking at from that height down, you have a better view of what is below you. And so you're not talking about looking straight across and being blocked by a wall. You're talking about looking down from distance into people's backyards where they like to have their families and family functions. And you have to remember first and foremost that this is a neighborhood. Secondly, the access onto 9th East, everybody's talked about the traffic flow there being adequate. But on a daily basis during rush hour, that traffic flow on 9th East is not adequate. And people have a hard time turning out onto 9th East just to turn right. And even saying that that further south exit is another option out of the Ivy Place Shopping Center is not true because the traffic backs up behind that area. You can't turn right out of there at those crucial times of the day. And then the last thing that I wanted to say is that I am a pediatric ICU nurse and have been practicing for over 11 years at Primary Children's, working with children that are critically ill. And I see a lot of devastating things happen to children. And as I said before, first and foremost, this is a neighborhood. We have kids that are outside riding their bikes on a daily basis during the summer, increasing the housing density to that point and backing traffic up through our neighborhood puts our children at higher risk for serious injuries that could change their lives permanently. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm Julie Price, and I've lived in that neighborhood since it was brand new in 1963. Moved in there with my parents, and then bought the house from them. And I remember Kmart being built and all the controversy, so I've been there a really long time. I just wanted to reiterate, and I don't see her, what she said, that people are not going to turn left onto 9th East, go down the 45th, and turn left again to get on the freeway or downtown. Once they learn, they can go through our neighborhood much faster and turn right out of the neighborhood. I know it would be much faster, and people are going to figure that out, and we are going to have traffic. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Hi. Can I move this? My name is Sylvia Catton. I am on the city I'm on the city council for Mill Creek. I don't live in this neighborhood. I do live a few blocks north, so I am familiar with this area. As I was listening to the presentation, I have a million questions, so I'm just going to ask them, and you guys can address them after I'm done. But they're questions that I think would be helpful for them to know that I had that I didn't see in the presentation, and I'm sure you guys know the answers because you've already seen the packet. So first of all, the 723 parking stalls, does that include that? I'm assuming that includes the retail parking, and if it does retail parking, is that going to be is it going to be allowable for residents to use that parking after hours? I have that question just because I foresee parking problems with, 1.7 stalls per unit. It was mentioned that there may be a redesign for the roundabout, and I'm questioning that only because I know when people turn from 9th East to go toward the neighborhood, they go really fast. I'm sure some of you are right. Right, there are speed bumps there now, but if you're going to take away the roundabout, which will slow traffic down, I would suggest looking at speed bumps or something that will slow people down on that road. With more people, you're going to need people to slow down. And then and then are these going to be rentals or owner occupied? That's a really important one. And then also how they're going to be managed, if management is going to be on site or whether it's going to be an off-site type thing. Another question was for the Java Joes. That was a big concern for me. The light at 9th East, so going out onto 9th East, and this is probably for the future when the project is completed, that light needs to be adjusted for timing to allow for the increased traffic. So I don't know, put that on the to-do list because it's going to be needed to be adjusted because there's already a lag and that's creating part of the problem for the light on 9th and 45th. Let's see. And then a big question is what's included in phase 1? That wasn't really clear to me what phase 1 or phase 2 is after that. And then along with that is if there is a development agreement or if Murray does development agreements. I don't know if that's your same language for an MOU, but a development agreement could help put some of the residents at ease in that they know that they're going to get what they're going to get and it's agreed upon, and the developers can't do something else that wasn't promised. And then I just want to say that I think change is hard. I think it doesn't matter what would have gone here. It would have been really hard. And quite frankly, I'm looking forward to it being developed only because right across the street where Walmart is, I'm sure you all know that there's a lot of crime and a lot of illicit behavior. And maybe I shouldn't say this, but a lot of the crime in Mill Creek does come from that Walmart, and the empty parking lot doesn't help that right now. So I'm excited for this to change. But the height, I realize that that's probably the biggest issue for most people. And I lament the fact that it's going next to this very quiet neighborhood. And trust me, I've walked this neighborhood several times. I know how quiet it is. I know how much of a neighborhood unit you guys are. So I do lament that this will be hard either way. And then I do have one, I wanted to make sure that I'm probably going over 3 minutes. I'm sorry. I have a concern about the streets. The two ladies who did mention turning onto 9th going north, they're right that it's going to happen to go north. That's going to happen. My concern is that some of those neighborhoods, as we became a city only 3 years ago, we have deteriorating roads already that we are trying to play catch up from when the county had them under their helm. And with more traffic and more people, I can see those being a bigger problem. And I'm going to see if maybe I can personally move up my priorities to look at this neighborhood in particular, because I'm a little worried that roads are going to deteriorate a little bit faster. Mm-hmm. So, that's just a concern that I have. And with that, I'm wondering if maybe on the access going out onto the 4680, 4660, if it's possible, I don't know how much signs work, but maybe just as a deterrent for new residents in this complex that, put, signage that directs them to the, through Ivy Place to turn out onto going north. I don't know.
Your time is up.
Okay, one more. And then I really wanted to say that I hope that we can work together with Murray if any issues arise at the completion of this, and I hope that you'll reach out and let us know, and because we will definitely be doing the same. And then one more quick thing, there is a homeless population that has moved from across the street in a vacant open area. I just want to note that security should be a big priority for this complex, because the homeless population that lives and hangs around the Walmart may move to the other side where retail is, especially after hours. That's a concern. I don't know. Have it addressed. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
My name is Susan Alva. I live at 753 Chena Way. We've been residents there for over 30 years. It's been a good community. I am very concerned about the height that is proposed, and I don't see why it has to be 4 stories. It needs to be at least 3. I'm also very concerned it was said that the traffic going onto 9th East wouldn't bother our area, but like Sally has said, the area in front of her home going out on 7th East is the road isn't very wide at all. And if there's any amount of traffic more than what we've already got in our neighborhood, it's really gonna throw us for a loop. So that's got to be addressed as well. And I think lowering it to 3 instead of a 4 will help some, but things like that, they say they have taken it into consideration, but not really. Having lived there for so long and seeing even what our neighborhood can do, just our neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
My name is Dave Brown. I live on 4623 South Nambo Way. I lived there for over 30 years. This study of traffic is totally garbage. We already know what happens in this neighborhood. All the traffic is going to come through there to get onto 7th or onto Van Winkle to head north. There's no reason for anyone to go 9th East to 45th to turn left to get the 7th East to get downtown. They're just not going to do it once they find out. As far as the Ivy Place, it's like they say, yes, that does crowd up. There's just no way that you're going to get anybody out that thing because it's going to be crowded. The bump in the light has to be taken out. With that thing, it shuts down left-hand drivers. It shuts down right-hand drivers going east, south, north. You get 3 cars through that light at one time. That's it, period. You leave that there, I don't care what you do with the lights. You're not going to get any more cars through there because it'll rip up somebody's car. It's always been that way. Diesels can't even go over it because they bottom out. As far as the height, yes, we've had this conversation with Salt Lake County. We've had it with you. I lived there for over 30 years. Murray was trying to annex a piece of property that was in our neighborhood at one time, and they wanted to do the same thing. They wanted to put in this mixed use apartments, 600 apartments, and we were only talking 5 acres. And it was shut down. You guys decided not to annex it because we wanted you to annex our neighborhood. You guys are as far as you can go north as far as Murray's concerned. This is your last piece of property north. And as far as development anywhere more around there, there's no more development property to develop. Everything's there now. Everything's new except our neighborhood unless you rip us out. We're stuck in the middle of you. We're in the middle of you. We have no say-so unless you guys say it's okay now. Okay, you own Van Winkle, you own 9th East, you own Ivy Place, you own everything. We're just in the middle of it now. You know, we've been arguing with you guys for years. We tried to get you to take us over for utilities. You said, nope, we can't do that. We can't handle you guys. And then you're putting in all this stuff in our backyard. You can handle it now. What happens before? You know, I mean, we had a chance to be annexed with you years ago. That's one of the things, okay? We have the traffic, yes. The height, yes. We fought Salt Lake County on this new development they had. And it came down to the point to where, yes, they lowered their building. They lowered their buildings from 4-story houses to 3-story houses on the east side, 2 stories, or 1-story, single story on the west side adjacent to the people that live along that fence line. 3 stories, come on. I mean, right on somebody's backyard, take their privacy, you take everything from them. They've lived there in you know, kind of peace the whole time. It's a very safe neighborhood, always has been. This crime she's talking about, I haven't seen it. I know there's a lot of bums hanging around over in Walmart, but as far as that, kids are there now. There's a lot more kids moving in there, a lot of younger families because the older ones are moving out. The traffic's coming through there. That's just the way it is. We know that because of Christmas time. Christmas time when Kmart and Walmart has their sales, they come through our neighborhood. That's what they do. You know they're there. Most of them, a lot of them come down and get stuck in the circle and turn right around and go back the other way. But they're trying to get out.
Your time's just about up.
What else is there? Oh, there's a lot. We're not against this. I mean, we know it's going to happen. I mean, it's just one of those things, and it's probably a good thing for us. Parking, yes, definitely is going to be a problem. I mean, I don't understand how Ivy Place is saying this is going to be a good thing for them, because the parking lot now has been used for overflow parking for all of those people in Ivy Place for the last 35 years. Now, you're going to take up that parking lot, and you're going to have all these businesses fighting each other for a parking spot. And I'll tell you right now, the Leprechaun is going to take up the whole row, and then the rest of the businesses are going to be going, what is this? You know, and then everybody's going to be putting signs out in front of their business going, this is ours, you know. And guess how many they get? You look at the study on the front of that face of those buildings there where the Leprechaun's at, how many spaces of parking there is for each business. Now, if you take away that overflow parking, it's gone. And you're going to have people fighting over that, okay? There's just not going to be any. Foot traffic, yes, we would like to walk there. We'd like to keep that open. That roundabout, I've worked for the Forest Service and the fire department areas. You try and get a type 1 ladder truck through that roundabout into that.
That's why they're thinking of reducing the sizes for the fire department.
Right, because see, it can't come in from Van Winkle. That's too short because they cut us off there. They cut that light off. We used to be able to turn left there. Okay, there used to be a turn there, and they cut it off because they said there was too many accidents. Well, that's because they never marked it to let people know that we're coming along Van Winkle, that people were turning left into our subdivision.
Right. I'm sorry, I have to cut you off. Your time is up, and we have to let everybody have a chance. Thank you.
Thank you for those comments.
I'm Wendy Fakery. I live at 4705 Green Valley Drive, and I haven't heard all the comments tonight, so I apologize if I'm repeating something, but I share many of the same concerns. And I've been in public education for over 25 years. I'm concerned about the schools in the area because we are surrounded by apartments already, and I'm excited for the good things this development will bring, but I also fear the size of it. And if it's going to be rental, then people will be in and out, and there's studies that show that if a school has a high amount of apartments in it, then the test scores go down, the home values for the people that attend that school will also be reduced. And so that's my concern. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? It's an opportunity. Sure.
Hi, I am Rachel Tani, and I don't live anywhere here, but I do work inside Ivy Place. I have a salon. I've worked there for the last 11 years, and I am very excited about this. I think growth is inevitable. It's exciting. However, the height is a concern. A lot of our clients do come to our salon. I'm worried. I don't know. I was a little bit late. If it has been spoken, I'm so sorry. I want to know if this is rental, is this owner prop, like what is this? What kind of housing is this? Hopefully not. We have a lot of crime. I even got broken in just to Thanksgiving night. And so I am worried about that security issue. I really want to make sure this is a project that is going to help us and not get that crime in there. I don't want just lower income even. I'm worried about parking. Ivy Place is already so limited on parking. This doesn't quite show exactly. Obviously, it's a proposition. I get it. I want to know what type of parking there's going to be along Ivy Place. I know you said you talked to them. They're really excited. I'm excited, but that's going to be an issue. Parking and traffic is going to be horrible. Please try to consider maybe lowering the people, amount of houses you have, and the height. That's just really all I gotta say. I'm just worried about crime and the parking and the traffic. Thanks.
Thank you. Anyone else? We have a lot of time left. All right. Pardon me? All right. Well, thank you for all of those comments. Excellent comments. So we will close the public comment period. And I think we've all taken a few notes. And we'll ask Jared to come back up to the podium, and we'll kind of go down your list of questions for you and see if we can answer all of those.
Can I ask one question for clarification?
Yes.
So, Jared, when the applicant stood up, he mentioned a roadway from this site to Van Winkle, which I had not heard of before.
The route through Ivy Place.
The existing route that goes out really to 900 East?
Through
A new.
out to Van Winkle through Ivy Place.
A new route through to Van
It's not
Winkle.
new, it's existing.
It exists.
Oh, behind the bank that way? Oh, okay.
Here. So that's
Yeah.
Well, that's why I need clarification to understand. It goes
So that-
back behind the bank. Okay.
Oh, let me go back to the arrow.
We need some order here.
All right, Jared, would you like to
part of the
take a shot at this?
Part of the applicant's comments that I think you're hearing is that this access staying open also keeps an access through Ivy Place or into Ivy Place open as well. So
Nothing new down
we
there.
wanted to, part of our mixed use ordinance asked for consideration of access to adjacent existing developments and future developments, and that's why we wanted to see that access remain open as well. And that kind of helps the project as well as Ivy Place there, as was mentioned. I'm trying to think the best way to address all these because there was a lot of comments. Let me start with a couple of things I think that maybe we can take together. Sewer was mentioned again a couple of times. Again, this is Mount Olympus sewer. It's not Murray City sewer, so we don't have the full knowledge of that. I understand. I believe that there are problems in the existing sewer. It may be under capacity. That can be probably better addressed through additional sewer that gets installed for this project. I'm guessing at that. Go ahead.
Jared, if I could just address just a little bit about the utilities.
Yeah.
From my professional experience
Sure.
in public works and with Murray City for over 30 years, the neighborhood probably doesn't even tie into this particular development.
Sure.
Utilities come from all directions. We have to trust the utility authority that their system, and it's a system issue, it's not just one line going into the city. All of this doesn't necessarily flow through the neighborhood. I don't know. I don't know the size, I don't know the specifics. But when we talk about utilities, there is no way that anyone in this room can really say that's going to be inadequate, that's going to be oversized or whatever. We have to trust these people, and the utility companies have a lot of skin in the game.
Sure.
If they say this is going to go, and if there are problems in those homes and the sewer company is the one that has to be responsible for that.
Right.
So this isn't just a carte blanche, oh yeah, we can handle it, let's move along thing.
Yeah.
They rely on consulting engineers and lots of things in order to make sure that water, sewer, power,
right.
gas, all of those things are taken care of.
I agree wholeheartedly with that. My experience has been over 17, 18 years doing this as well. It's not easy to get a will serve letter necessarily. There's been several projects that we've done since I started with Murray.
We had our Midvale project, right?
Yeah, the Midvale
Right.
project and the townhomes on 13th West. We had trouble getting will serve letters on all those. It took months to get the utilities that were providing those will serve letters to sign off and say, yeah, we think we'll be able to handle it at this point. So I agree, Phil. Thank you. It's a good comment. There was a lot of let's talk about traffic for just a minute, see if we can address some of those issues as well. While I think the traffic study bears out that there's not a likelihood that people will, in a large way, use the west neighborhood to get through to Van Winkle, I believe that to be true as well, just looking at it. There is, with that said, Zach's been trying to get Google Maps to give him a route through that west neighborhood from this project area for 15 or 20 minutes and can't get it to it. It keeps routing you through Ivy Place if you're blocked from 9th East. Still, there's no way to guarantee that no car from this project will ever go through that west neighborhood. I can't tell you that will never happen. I would love to promise you that. There's no way to guarantee that unless we close that access.
Exactly.
And believe me, the developers would be happy to close that access. We've demanded that it stay open as a group of 6 or 7 or 8 different public entities looking at the project. So you can put that on us. What we feel like from a planning standpoint, from an engineering standpoint, from a public safety standpoint, from a utility standpoint, that access needs to stay open. We can explore the idea of signage, as the councilwoman mentioned. I'm not sure how that would affect it or whether that would be possible or not, or whether, frankly, whether it would be appropriate, but we'll we'll consider that with the developers and as we move forward with an MOU. I said MOU, and it just reminded me that the councilwoman also asked about the memorandum of understanding. It does function like a development agreement. It's a contract between the city and the developers. It'll guarantee that those developments, that those improvements that'll make the development nicer, that they'll happen. The time frame we talked about, access through the project, et cetera. It's a big project and it's in a couple of phases. One thing that the phasing of the project does do is allow you access no matter what. So Ryan Kimball mentioned that the access might need to be closed as it's improved. There's good opportunities to reroute that traffic during that time, during a part of the phase that's not constructed in phase one. Just a thought. It's an easily accommodated concern. Speaking of the phases, that was another concern. How are the phases organized? The first 2 residential buildings are part of phase one, as well as all of the utilities and infrastructure for the commercial portion. So all of the utilities for the site, and phase one includes the first 300 units, residential units. Phase 2 would be the construction of these 2 buildings. The commercial portion is not tied to either phase 1 or phase 2 because it may happen before phase 1 is built out, that there are pad sites that are ready to develop as the interest in that grows. So they're not tied necessarily to phase 1 or phase 2. We wouldn't prohibit one from beginning construction during phase 1, but we wouldn't demand it either. The infrastructure alone going in is enough of a guarantee that it happens along with the MOU. So that's the phasing of the project. The improvements to the intersection would need to happen, and I think it was addressed in one of our planning review meetings about the dip. The nature of that intersection is kind of poor. It needs upgrading. That'll be part of the project. The roundabout, it was an interesting comment about the roundabout slowing down traffic, and I wanted to address that real quickly if I could as well. So you have a great councilwoman working for you, by the way. She's right on top of all the right kinds of issues. So congratulations, and we'll try to keep those channels open as we go forward, absolutely. Right now, this parking lot is a giant empty parking lot with kind of an undisclosed amount of space that you have for an access all the way through to the west. That's an invitation to go, I don't know, 45, right? With that in mind, this roundabout would slow traffic down. If we can keep the roundabout by shrinking the size of the circle and making sure it's good emergency access, we'll definitely do that to try to calm traffic. Even if it has to be removed because of emergency services, this view going through with tall buildings on either side, sidewalks and parks that don't currently exist, all the visual cues start to, and cars parked along the street as well, all those visual cues start to slow you down. So that's a good thing in general. It doesn't always feel like a good thing when you're used to rocketing through that parking lot to get back and forth in the neighborhood. It's going to slow you down. But that's a good thing in the end. The visual cues will all change through that access as it's built out. So speed can be reduced even without the roundabout if it's not feasible to keep it.
Jared, what would the speed limit be on that road, and will it be posted or?
I don't know that with the visual cues that would be in place, I don't think you'd need to post it. But in a parking lot like that, 15 miles an hour at the best. And you wouldn't really, you'll find yourself probably going 10 when it's built out. Not at first, but when it's built out, you won't drive through that more than 10 or 12 miles an hour. Thank you.
There's nothing.
So I would see that reduced. I would plan on that.
It's an open parking lot.
Yeah. I don't want to miss things, but there's an awful lot. Reducing the height of the building was mentioned a lot of times, so I want to just address that if I can. When we made these changes to the zoning ordinance, to the mixed-use zone, we addressed a couple of things specifically, and one of them was height. 50 feet is what we allow at that distance, at 100 feet. That's kind of it meets the proposed project meets the standards of the ordinance that we have set as a city and agreed to. So I don't feel like I can recommend to you that it would be appropriate to reduce the height of the buildings. I know that's not the desired effect in looking at the neighborhood behind, but these are the heights that we've agreed to allow in the mixed-use zone. We've done some massing, looking at the buildings with tools that Zach's familiar with in the office, et cetera. The impacts are there, but when you look at the impact of the existing Kmart building and the distance that's increased, you do see some reduction in that impact. You won't see it till it's built, but we do feel confident in recommending that height is appropriate. It's appropriate because the zoning allows it. Again, the density is allowed as we've configured it, 40 units per acre. The traffic study bears out that density can be accommodated, as does the parking. The parking was mentioned as well. There are some additional parking spaces. The parking that's provided does slightly exceed the required parking under our code, and it is about 1.7 per unit on average. The residential parking could use there's obviously going to be some shared parking between the commercial and the residential as night falls. That happens in all these kind of mixed-use projects. 3 of my daughters live in this kind of a project. It's not hard to find a parking space when I need to go there at 6:30 or 7 at night. And their parking isn't any more than this. This is the kind of parking that we're not used to seeing. This is new development. This is the new model. It was asked, one of the residents asked about the overall parking in these household units. These are 3-bedroom, a few 3-bedroom, mainly 2-bedroom and 1-bedroom units. The likelihood that all of those units would have 2 or more vehicles is null. It just doesn't happen. And we've seen this in other parking projects, in other apartment projects. There won't be that. I don't foresee a parking problem. If I thought there would be a parking problem, I would have recommended to you when we amended the zoning that we increase the parking requirements more than we did. I don't want to miss any of the things either.
Jared, can you comment about the involvement that our staff has had with Mill Creek Planning?
Yeah, sure.
I know that we did get an email from them. It was too late to include, in the formal package that we have. But perhaps you could summarize their comments. And there was a question as to when that involvement occurred.
So that involvement began back when the zone change was approved. I don't know Tom. Tom's name was mentioned. I don't know a Tom. We've dealt, all of our communication has been with Frank Lilly, the planning director there. And I can't summarize his comments, but Zach has them on his phone if you wouldn't mind.
Okay.
So, and I'll let Zach do that if you'd like. Zach, is that all right? Oh, let me address that real quickly as well. So, because that's another main point. Yes, this is rental product. These are rental units as they're planned.
Management on site or off site?
Management definitely on site. Kimball's and ICO do management on site. And with this number of units, you have pretty extensive management on site, as well as a need to keep up a lot of different improvements that are tied to commercial elements. That's significant on-site management. These, I don't want to get into too big of a discussion about rental versus ownership units for tonight, because that's an hour and a half discussion. But rental product is not what it was 15 years ago. A lot of product in this area is older rental that was done years ago at 3 stories and 2 stories. That's not what's feasible if we want to have a mixed-use project here. For a mixed-use project, we need to see the heights at 4 and 5 stories. That's just a given for the density. Rental product, we discussed this with the school district. Again, there are some concerns with people coming and going, but in the market that we have now where people cannot buy, people are staying longer in rental units, and that's demographics that, again, I don't want to have an hour and a half discussion about, but the demographics are changing, and rental units are not used as transient units as much anymore. So you'll start to see
these
that
market
change.
rate? Are these like market rate rental units?
Market rate rental units. And the market is fairly expensive.
Which that means it's not identified as low income.
Right.
Or
It has not been to this point, but I do want to caution you about that. If this were for the sake of total transparency, if this had a low income component, I would still support it, probably more stringently. We need affordable housing, not just in Murray, not just in Mill Creek, not just in Utah.
I guess because you said that, then maybe we should clarify that definition, because sometimes in some of the definitions, I'm low income.
Right. It's not hard to meet 85. It's hard to get past 85% of the median income.
85% of the median income?
That's low income. And the median income in this part of Murray is $68,000 at this point. So, I don't know, do the math. It's not median income and low income apartments. That shouldn't be a consideration of the Planning Commission, unless we're supporting a project because we need to increase our ability to provide affordable income housing for people that are coming up. A lot of the residents in this neighborhood have owned their homes for years and years. November 21st was the first contact? Oh, right. Okay. So the notice was given to Mill Creek Planning November 21st.
For this project, not for the change of...
For this project, correct. And
Thank
then yeah. So I'll let Zach summarize. Unless you have other questions right now, I'll let Zach summarize.
I have 2 more. So one comment was, can the city in any way or the developer indemnify the residents and their concerns?
Not to my knowledge, no. No one can indemnify. Well, no. Frankly, no.
So, and also, could you just touch on crime a little bit as far as concerns with crime in the neighborhood, perhaps on either side of 900 East?
Sure. Activity is always a deterrent to crime. So as a couple of people have noted, the redevelopment of this site, instead of it being an empty big box and a giant empty parking lot, will deter crime. These kinds of developments don't this is a nice new development, 421 new market rate units and good commercial on 900 East. It should be a deterrent to crime in the area, not increasing it. I do want to say, with respect to indemnifying, it depends on what you mean by indemnifying. We do everything that we can to assure that the problems that can be mitigated, or the likely impacts of a development like this that can be mitigated, are mitigated. That's our version of indemnifying it. And the same thing happens with utilities when they give the will serve letters and say we're gonna make this work. That's as much of an indemnification as they can give anybody. But no one can ensure you that you will never suffer an impact because they can't control all those variables.
Right.
So.
Thank you.
Just one other thing I'd mention about crime at our last meeting. When we rezoned this property, I think we heard some fairly salacious details of what was going on behind the Kmart building. That clearly will go away. So,
I'd also like to mention the school issue was brought up by the lady that's the school teacher, and this development will feed into Murray City Schools, and they have examined the plan for this. They've seen the density, the size of the apartments. They essentially, Jared, they count bedrooms instead of units, and they have indicated that they can handle this with their existing school setup. So
there could be crossover into the Granite District with this project, though, correct?
There could be some. I was only contacted by Murray City School District about Parkside Elementary. That's their principal concern, is the elementary schools with this type of development.
But James E. Moss is the traditional school for the Green Valley neighborhood anyways. And Twin Peaks.
It's in Murray, but it's in Granite District.
Right, right.
Back in the old days, it was James E. Moss. Mrs. Matsura, I went to school with one of your kids, so I know.
All right, Zach, you have some additional information for us?
I was just going to go over just kind of the letter that was provided from Frank Lilly, the planning director. He had stated there were 4 items that they were specifically concerned about. First was the residential neighborhood to the west. Sorry, I'm going through this as I do it to make sure I catch everything. So he does state that the access be preserved in perpetuity and formalized through either through some sort of either access agreement or which would be addressed in the memorandum of understanding. Second, they note the proposed the access onto 9th East. They did look over that, and they did say it's an improvement over the conditions there are now. It is one thing I think that was briefly touched on was new curb and gutter. I believe there's 8 and 7, an 8-foot park strip and a 7-foot sidewalk on the 900 East side. As well as, so that will be regraded and relooked at. So I assume that dip at 9th East access would be addressed. It would also need to meet ADA requirements, all those things like that. So it would need to be addressed there. Let's see. The third item was along the west property line. He mentions that there are rear yards facing that. Recommend that there are landscaping, including trees and stuff, to adequately buffer. And on the site plan that we've shown, there's at least there's 18 feet of landscaping proposed in that section right there. Let's see, and then the fourth. They looked at the traffic study that was provided, that was also provided to the commission. Let's see. They were also in the agreement that after looking at that they would anticipate that most of the traffic would come from or would go out onto 900 East or through Ivy Place.
Or is it, maybe it would be appropriate to say the greatest influence?
Yeah, the greatest, yeah, sure. That's, yeah, definitely another way of saying that. Let's see. And other than that, that's pretty much what he had said in summary.
Thank you
Sorry,
very
that
much.
kind of just
No.
stumbled through that
No,
as I
thank
was
you. We caught
read
you
through it again.
kind of cold turkey on that, so thank you.
Can I ask a question about the west side trees? I actually drove the property and sat on it when I was reading the packet and all, but I didn't pay attention to the trees back there. If there's any trees that are back there, would they consider preserving them? If they have old growth trees?
I don't think there are any trees on the Kmart
No.
site.
They're all in the neighborhoods.
What we could
lots.
assure would be that the neighborhood trees wouldn't be impacted by that. There are ways to make sure that when you're installing that masonry wall, we don't impact those trees.
Or
So,
do our best to not impact?
because they're doing a lot right now, and you don't want to lose that kind of buffering that already exists and has been growing for 30 or 40 years.
You may ask a question.
I'd like to know when you used Google Maps last to exit your neighborhood, or if you just explored your own neighborhood and found your own routes out and then started using it.
The assertion, I guess that what I would say is that the assertion was that people coming into this neighborhood would start to use that as a way to get out. Wandering into the neighborhood at Christmas time or whatever when there's shopping going on. I don't think that's likely. I also don't think it's likely, frankly, that anybody that lives in the project is going to use that versus a light that you can take a left or right and come to another light and use that when the traffic is heavier. And the traffic study, and this is the last thing I'll say. The traffic study, we always ask for traffic studies. Had we not done a traffic study, the comment would be, why is there no traffic study to tell us what to do? We have a traffic study, and it's not accepted. So I don't know how to address that other than that.
Well, when I was reading the traffic study, I was really impressed with the efforts that they went through and the lengths they went to investigate the benefit of having that light on 4680 at 9th East and making that the turn lanes and that they're going to be
additional pockets for
pockets, or what we call a turn lane. For us civilians, to help mitigate this traffic. I mean, they've done a good job with the traffic study. I felt I'm the most lame of laymen, and I studied it for a long time, and I was pleased with how thorough they were in taking everything into consideration. And change is inevitable. It just is. I used to have a view from my house, and I no longer do because somebody built another house. Whether it's a 4-story building or another house, things are going to be impacted. It's just the way that life is. But I think the city has done a really good job with researching all of the contingencies with this project.
Appreciate that.
And I came in tonight very skeptical about traffic. I came in and I said, traffic, right? That's the first thing I said in the pre-meeting.
That's a direct quote, yeah.
Direct quote. First thing I said in the pre-meeting. And it's going to affect my life too, this area. But after reading through the packet in detail, Phil will probably roll his eyes twice for that degree. And thinking about it in detail, I do appreciate the traffic study more. And I appreciate the fact that we've just said not that it just won't be bad, that it will have changes, and the traffic study shows there's changes, and therefore we're anticipating responding to it by doing things to address those changes in the traffic pattern, right?
Yes.
Because it affects my life too.
It's a good job. Yes. We have it. If it's requested, we can send it to folks. Can I make one last?
Sure.
I didn't address Java Joe's. So
yes,
I don't want to speak for Ryan, but I know that they're trying to work out something with Java Joe's to keep them as a tenant if they're able to. So it's a good business.
And the other development didn't work out anything with Taco Time, and I'm just going to point that out.
We'll bear that forever.
So I'd say a couple things about traffic. It's always contentious subject, and there are going to be some things that the traffic study gets perfect, and there's going to be some things that gets wrong. Generally, what I've seen for traffic studies, they're generally pretty good. As far as access to the neighborhood, we could do some other things with the city to help traffic in the neighborhood, to keep it slower. If it's slower, people aren't going to go that way. Like it's been said, they'll go out onto 900 East, either go north or go south, depending on their destination. But there are some other traffic calming methods that can be used inside the neighborhood, and you put them out, and people who don't live there tend to not want to go 10 miles an hour. for whatever reason, safety for children, just the fact that it's a residential neighborhood, not a through street. So there are some other things that can be done should, in fact, it become more of an issue. And I'm not saying that it isn't or that it is going to be. We all try to find the easiest way out of wherever we live to a bigger arterial and get our way to our destination. So regardless, even of any kind of development here, the neighborhood could be adjusted, or the street in the neighborhood could be adjusted to facilitate less traffic or to disincentivize people from driving on those streets.
Ned, and if I could make a point, that street is Mill Creek City property.
Correct.
Right. We cannot mandate these adjustments Ned's talking about, but your city should be able to listen to you and do traffic. You can do traffic counts. There's multiple ways that they can become involved to help you as well. Murray City can't come in there and do any of this. Once that street goes into the neighborhood and leaves this development pad, it is Mill Creek City.
Good. Great clarification on that. Thank you. All right, commissioners, other comments, discussions?
Can I just make some general comments?
Absolutely.
I think in general, this is a high-quality development that they're proposing here. They're not coming in and doing fly-by-night construction. This is concrete. This is steel. This is a big investment on the part of the builder. They're not trying to just slam in anybody that can rent from them, because not everybody can afford to live in this type of development. And I think that they're trying to incorporate this development into the broader context of this area. And I think it actually improves large aspects of this area. I think just the frontage along 900 East in general, I think that's a dramatic improvement. It's safer for pedestrians. You have a larger park strip. You have larger sidewalks for people to be able to move in and around the area. They have a sidewalk network that is going to incorporate both into the neighborhood and into the greater neighborhood along 900 East. I really appreciate that about the project. I think that a big win is that they were able to maintain access. I know that it's a double-edged sword for you guys. I appreciate that it's a double-edged sword, but you guys will be using this road as much as the people that live in this development. So I'm glad that they were able to protect that. Also, if you look at just the tax base and how this will change the tax base per square foot, this is way more efficient than a 100,000 square foot building on a 10-acre site. That doesn't generate much tax revenue per square foot. This is going to change that as well. I know that Mill Creek City won't necessarily realize that benefit, but overall, it's going to help in that general area.
Well.
You really can't at this point.
I'll never go home.
We've answered a lot of questions this evening.
You're
So
welcome to talk to staff after the meeting.
After the meeting, and we can end. We'll stay as long as you'd like to stay and talk.
Mr. Chair, one more quick comment. It's very impressive how many people from the community came out and participated tonight. And this participation hopefully helps an understanding on both sides for the long term. And continue to participate, City Council, Mill Creek. Another comment, I think we have more people here from Mill Creek tonight than Murray, which is intriguing to me.
Sure, it's the neighborhood. Sure.
Well, it affects Murray too. I live in Murray. It'll affect, and I mean, I'm impressed you guys came out.
All right. If there's additional discussion, we'll hear that. Otherwise, I'd entertain a motion regarding the first motion or first action on the master site plan for this particular development.
Mr. Chair, I will make a motion that we approve the master site plan to allow for the proposed mixed-use development on the property addressed at 4670 South 900 East, subject to conditions 1 through 8.
With the addition of the wall.
Yes, I would like to ask you to amend your resolution to include an 8-foot wall for the neighborhood.
On number 8.
Can I just randomly ask a question?
Sure.
Before I move forward with that? Who backs onto this property directly? Show of hands, anybody?
Close isn't the same as
I did, in the conversation, I did only hear one person mention the 8-foot fence. I'm not opposed to the 8-foot fence. I'm not opposed to the 8-foot fence. I don't think it is going to help with the second, third, fourth stories of this building in any way, shape, or form. But I believe the ground level activity associated with that level of parking is significant. There are a number of people there. A 6-foot tall wall while I'm standing up on the curb, up on a berm, I can see into your yard. We've seen examples of that over the years through this. I'm willing to change that and state that I don't see what it would be a condition number 9.
It's in condition 8 talks about masonry.
I would amend
wall.
it to say that it is an 8-foot masonry wall.
Thank you.
Yes.
All right, I have a motion.
I will second that.
In a second. Is there any other discussion?
No.
Jared, could you take a roll call vote, please?
I will, thanks. Mr. Nay.
Yes.
Mr. Markham.
Yes.
Ms. Milkevich.
Why did you wait for me till the end?
You were next to Travis.
I'm so confused. Yes.
Ms. Wilson.
Yes.
Mr. Hacker.
Yes. So motion passes for this master site plan to go forward. Understand your concerns as neighborhood, and we'll continue to work the city with Mill Creek and to see if we could try to mitigate some of the concerns that you've said to us tonight. So motion passes, and
Still need a second motion.
Family, was that the first motion or the second motion that we just did?
Pardon me?
Did you just do the first motion?
Yes. Yeah, it was on the master site plan.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the second one is regarding the conditional use permit for this particular site.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion that the Murray City Planning Commission approve a conditional use permit to allow the proposed mixed-use development on the property addressed 4670 South 900 East, subject to conditions 1 through 8 as presented to us this evening, with number 8 reading an 8-foot masonry wall.
Right. We have a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second.
An additional discussion? Jared, could you call the vote, please?
Mr. Markham.
Yes.
Mr. Nay.
Yes.
Ms. Milkevich.
I just want to say I personally am disappointed in the density, but that's just my personal feelings. So, yes.
Ms. Wilson.
Yes.
Thank you.
And the chairman votes yes also.
Mr. Hacker, sorry.
I vote yes. All right, motion passes.
He has a gavel.
So again, we greatly appreciate all of your comments. They did not go unheard. I guarantee you that. This commission all lives in Murray and are concerned about the neighborhoods, particularly those places in the cities that have common borders with our other neighbor cities. And again, I'll guarantee you that this city, Murray, will continue to coordinate with Mill Creek on this particular project and other projects that come up along our borders. So thank you for participating tonight. And if you want to stay after, this is our last business item other than just asking if there is any other business. So we'll stay and answer your question if you'd like to stay after we close the meeting.
Okay, so
Zach, is there any other business?
Yes, just real quick. I know I polled you all to make sure. Are you guys all still able to meet for the 19th? I have a single item. I'm going to shoot for a record again. So, yes. So just clarifying, making sure you all are going to be able to make it for the 19th. I know that's getting really close to Christmas. And then also gauging the one after that is the 2nd of January. Do you guys know of any conflict as of right now?
I haven't seen the football schedule yet.
My desire is not very great, if that's,
We've already received a couple items that are coming forward.
I would be very questionable for that one.
Okay, I can relay that. Okay, I think that's it. Unless Jared has anything else he'd like to bring up.
All right, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
So thank you for attending. Meeting is closed.